Hello, everyone. This is a long overdue thing, but we are finally recording the commentary for The Bell Rings. If you don't know who I am, I'm Ethan. I directed, wrote, and edited this movie, and I acted in it alongside all the wonderful actors you're seeing here on the screen right now. So Jordan, Bellamy, and Richard. This was a movie that was shot back in 2021. And as of today, it's just about to roll over into the new year, to 2023, as I'm recording this. So yeah, this movie's got a long story. I'll try and cover as much of that as I can while watching the movie. Hopefully I catch everything that I want to talk about today. So I guess we'll just kind of go into, first of all, how this movie came to be. So there's a long history to it, and many different versions of this movie kind of have been written or put together over the years. I had an idea for a movie about a wish-granting bell, and I think that's kind of where all this started, and that all kind of, shifted and took different forms over time. And so the earliest ideas, I think I have it go back to like 2018 or so. And I wanted it to take place like in a town where it was like an outsider coming back in. It was like kind of like a town out of time. And ultimately I wasn't able to do that just because the scale and the like amount of people, because I wanted to feel like a really fleshed out town with a lot of people. And it just would have been a nightmare to try and put it together. So ended up not doing that, and instead we changed our focus. We worked on some other projects, and in the background I kind of was thinking about other ways that this movie could be. And so I have all these ideas written down, and I've kind of toyed with the idea of making a almost like an anthology movie where each one is The Bell Rings, but it covers all the different kind of stories and like ideas I've had for it over the years. And each one, I think, I don't know, it could come in a lot of different forms. I don't have all the answers for how I want it to be, but I think it'd be cool for like it to be an anthology series and then kind of come together in a final movie that kind of takes all the stories and wraps them up into one and almost like solves the mystery of the bell. I don't know. That's kind of been my thought for a couple months now of if I were to keep going with Bell Ring stories, like how I'd want to do it. But yeah, here's some great stuff of us working in the field. Funny enough, this is we had to shoot this twice, a lot of these shots, which Jordan was not happy with me about, because there was one of the lenses I was using, I couldn't really tell on just looking at the LCD screen I had, but there was a giant hair in like the middle of the screen, and it was a big deal to me. Jordan didn't see it that way. He was like, no, you keep it in the shot. It doesn't matter. But I was like, no, I have to get rid of it. So we reshot a lot of these, which I'm actually thankful for, because I think some of the compositions I got were better the second time we filmed. But we were just out in a field in the middle of summer for like 3 or 4 hours at a time to shoot this movie. It was brutal. Not even, not gonna downplay it. It was hot. It was, we were just digging holes. Not much acting to it. You just had to do it. So we were really feeling our characters. I think that was one of the first things we shot too. How I got the location of the farm was I wanted to shoot out in this place called Sauvie Island, which is out kind of 40 minutes away from like Portland, from our side of Portland. Jordan and I live in like the west side of Portland. So it'd be like over on like the northeast end. But there was a farm that I had kind of location scouted. I decided that I really liked it, but rolling up kind of a couple months later to actually, like, as we were ramping up towards production, I wanted to ask the owners if we could use their property. And as I went out to ask them, it turned out they totally redone their field, and it looked great. Everything was growing, it was looking nice, and I was like, shoot, this isn't gonna work for my movie. So I drove around in near where this church actual location was, and I was driving around through there trying to see if there was any possible location we could use. And luckily I drove past a field that looked good. It was not being used. And so I rolled up on their door and asked if we could shoot at their location. And they said yes. They were really, really nice about it. It was a great little farm. Very appreciative to them. This movie obviously wouldn't work without it. And getting this church location, I might have told this story somewhere else before, but when Nathan Cash and Caleb Robinson from 922, or RC Films, when they came down to Portland to visit us, I remember if it was the first or second time we got to meet them. No, it was the first. We were giving them a tour around Portland of all the locations that we've filmed at over the years, and we decided to have lunch at this church because it's a location we had shot at for years and years and years for many different short films like Righteous Hombres and other ones like the fourth Mr. Fiddle film and a bunch of other stuff. We filmed here, so we had lunch. We just ate like McDonald's on the front porch and we're telling them stories, and I actually pitched them my idea for what the Bell Rings was going to be at the time. And there happened to be this dude doing yard work around the graveyard out back. And he came around to us and he was just kind of asking what we were doing. And we were just like, oh, we just really like this place. Like, it's a really beautiful building. He's like, oh, well, do you want to see the inside? And so he turned out was the groundskeeper. And he let us in and we got to walk around and check out the inside of the church. And I told him like, oh yeah, we're filmmakers. We really love this place. And he said, oh, well, if you ever want to film in here, just send me a text and let me know and I'll let you in. So I got his number that day, and a couple months later we were filming inside this building that we'd only ever filmed the outside of. So it was a great little, again, like coincidence, just perfect timing. So thanks Caleb and Nathan for making this happen, because again, it was a location that I at the time was writing where we'd only see the outside of, because I knew, or I thought we weren't gonna be able to film inside of it. And just goes to show all the great luck that can come out of this. Man, I love Richard's, his sermon. I didn't actually write any of this. Richard prepared both of his sermons. I just wrote that Robert was preaching, and I told Richard, I was like, hey, if you have some ideas of what you want to kind of put in there, go for it. And so he showed up on set and had both these sermons memorized, ready to go. So we shot 2 versions of each, 2 different angles. And originally this was a little bit shorter, but close to the end of editing, Jordan and I were talking and he suggested that we make this even longer. Because I had it cut down quite a bit. And so this is a much bigger scene. And I'm glad it's that way. It was very warm here though, I remember that. We were shooting in August. We started shooting, oh man, let me see here, because I have my notes of my production schedule. And I want to see, when did we start, what was our first day? Hold on, I got to move some papers, but I'm never as prepared for these commentaries as I want to be. But, okay, I have my, all right, here we go. I have my big old binder here of all my original scriptments. Excuse me. And, okay, let's see here. Outlines, budget. I think the budget came out to like $555 even on this movie, which, that's not too bad if you ask me. That's cheaper than I thought we had gone. I thought we spent more. We don't really have budgets. We just spend until the movie's done, and we hope it's not too much. Okay, yeah. So,
seems a lot more empty in service recently, though.
Let's see here. Yeah, we started right at the beginning of August. I have here Monday. Gosh, is that the 2nd? Yeah, Monday the 2nd, I think, was our first day of shooting. And we wrapped up on the 23rd was our last day. But I think the total amount of days was 14 days of shooting. And then from there, there were a few little days where I went out and got some pickups here and there. And that kind of happened over the course of a few months. Because I'd be editing the movie, and then I would realize, oh, I need to get an insert shot of this scene, or I need a new shot of the moon, or I need an exterior of the shack. And so I'd get those over time later. This stuff was all shot at a park that had these big fields. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold still. But this stuff here, yeah, this park was out in Lake Oswego, which is kind of a nicer neighborhood in Oregon, and it's got this really cool giant park that was like, it had these big sections of fields that you could just kind of walk through. People actually ride their horses there, which is a super interesting little thing. So I think on one of the days we saw someone out there riding their horse through the fields, but it was just nice because it was a field with big tall grass that I knew we didn't have to ask permission to be. It was just open to the public. And just a couple of weeks after, I think they cut all of it down. So we got there just in time, which was really lucky. This location was a shed, actually in my mom's backyard. So I just went in, took everything out that was anything that didn't fit. There was an old furnace in our back, like in our garage. That was like from my mom's house was like an old farmhouse. So there's a lot of old farm supplies and it's kind of old stuff there. So I found this old furnace that I brought in, and it looks the part. So it's back there. It's that metal tube. Maybe that metal tube isn't quite so accurate, but it doesn't draw too much attention. And but then I cut a window into the shack 'cause I knew I wanted a little bit of natural light in there. Otherwise, it's just pitch black. And it came together really, really well. We got super lucky to have all the locations we needed. Obviously, because it was my mom's, we could film as late as we wanted, as often as we wanted. I was still living there at the time, so it worked out very well. Yeah, and it was it was really fun. I think on this day, I was really stressed because I think I found out that I clicked the wrong setting on my camera, and so all this stuff was shot at like 720p in 60 frames a second or something. And I was just so upset about it, but you can't tell. So let it be a lesson. Your resolution, you'll be okay, even at 720.
This is Peter's farm, not yours. Please, don't speak for him.
Yeah, this scene was really fun to write and really fun to perform, and I think there's a lot of stuff that I was trying to kind of incorporate into all these characters' relationships and how Robert views Peter versus how Robert views James. And I had someone in the last month or so ask about the tension between Robert and James and why that's there, and they were asking me if it was a racially based hatred of Robert towards James, and that's where I was kind of starting from, because I wanted these characters to be brothers, but I knew that it was most likely to be Jordan and me. So there was kind of a, I wanted to incorporate some kind of tension around the fact that Jordan's character is adopted by my family, by my now deceased parents in this movie, and so Robert sees him as kind of like this, not bastard, but he's not a rightful heir. And then there's me, who's in my mind the older of the two, who's kind of in charge. And Robert only interacts with Peter and only really gives him the respect and the time, and kind of sees him as rightful to all the inheritance. So yeah, that was something that was really heavy in the script. There's a lot more of that, and then both in the shooting and then the editing, that kind of became lesser. I still think it's there, but there were certain scenes, and there's a scene coming up where I think I cut a lot out, and you lose some of that stuff. But yeah, that was definitely a big intention in this movie and how I wanted. And this scene here, I kind of look at it as kind of, when Jordan and I when we were shooting this movie, Jordan kept talking to me, and we were kind of discussing how we wanted the scenes to flow, and we were I wanted the movie to be shot a bit more traditionally in its coverage, and Jordan was really pushing for long takes and let the pacing really come from the actors, not from the editing. And the more we shot, the more I came to agree with that, and I let scenes play out. So by the time we were shooting scenes like this, which I think was a little kind of in the middle of production, we were, again, doing these long takes. So there's no cuts here. We would just act through it, which was hard because when you're directing and cinematographer and organizing all the scenes, that's just kind of how we've, up to this point, been running things at Dune Productions, where if you're a director, you're running the whole thing, which is, on one hand, it's great because it teaches you so much. You learn every aspect through and through for what it takes to make a movie. But the hard part of that is, for things like acting, I didn't have time to really focus on my lines and my character. There were a lot of days where I felt like I really had to phone in my performance. And I was really nervous when it came to editing about how was my character going to come together, because I really wasn't sure how that was going to feel and if he was not going to fit with the movie. And that's a hard thing, and that's a trade-off that I think directors need to really think about, because I think in the YouTube filmmaking space, you're relying on yourself to fill in so many roles, and that's just a reality. And you'll see tons of people in like the folk filmmaking movement who the director is one of the main actors, and again, that's out of necessity, I think, a lot of the time. Obviously, it's much easier if you can have people just stay in one role, like kind of in the more traditional Hollywood system, because they can focus and put all their energy into that one thing, and that's going to make just an overall stronger piece and stronger product. But again, that's a luxury that I'm assuming most young, no-budget filmmakers don't have, including us. We've been doing this for 10 years now almost, and we're still, having to constantly worry about, just our time and the time of our actors and getting people on set. So having to act in your own stuff, it's just a necessity, and sometimes there's trade-offs like that. It just passed, but her tattoos, that was a very intentional decision to leave those uncovered. Bellamy has these really great tattoos on her arms, and I could have covered them up with our costuming. My wife, she was one who loaned a bunch of clothes for Bellamy's character to wear, and we could have covered them, but I really liked kind of how they make Bellamy's character feel other to this world. It's a little bit odd. It's a little bit, it stands out, and I wanted that. And again, it's what's lucky is there's nothing modern or pop culture-y about them, really. They're very traditional tattoos. Ooh, fire truck went by. And because of that, I think they work. And everyone, it's up to up to everyone to decide if they think they like those tattoos or not. But I really like them. I think they're great. All right, more digging. Again, this stuff, like, there was so much, there's that little hair. It was just there for a second in one of those shots. It sneaks in. A couple shots I had to actually, it was like, if it was in the sky, I could take a piece of the sky and cover it up. But yeah, this farming stuff, that hair that was in the lens really got me. But yeah, there was, where he's talking about the city here, I really wanted to actually show the city. And there, in the script, which you can, if you listen to this since you're on Patreon, you can go back and read the script. I've posted it. There are scenes that we never shot of what it was like of Robert, when he drives off with me in the car. We go to the city, and he walks me around and shows me the city and how great it is. But I ultimately didn't do that, and that was for a few reasons I'll get into maybe in a little bit. But yeah, we never showed the city, though I did think about having it kind of in this, like these wide shots here where you can kind of see the horizon, letting it almost be like Oz or Metropolis, like some crazy city, almost like bordering on sci-fi, like kind of just peeking through the haze in the distance. Again, that didn't end up happening. I think that would have been really cool. This river here is the same river that if you watch our movie Video Carnage, when May and Jordan's characters are walking to Victor's house to spy on it, there's this river they're walking past. This is the same spot. It's in Jordan's aunt's like backyard. And I saw it and I was like, oh man, I totally want to use this for my movie at some point, because I knew I wanted there to be scenes that took place kind of where James and Mary kind of can hide, like they're a little hideaway. So I wanted them to have that. It was just a beautiful little area and it had great little atmosphere. I love, this kind of feels like House in a way. This and some of the dream sequences. It was nice to shoot, actually shot in the same location that the second half of my movie House was shot in. But yeah, just shooting in this big room that we had access to at my old work. And just, we blocked out everything. And yeah, it was really nice. But this scene was, that scene I was talking about earlier where it had, like, where those racial tensions between Robert and James, where he kind of interrogating Peter and kind of getting at, we kind of get at why Robert doesn't like James. There was a whole lot more dialogue that I cut out just because some of the flow of this scene, I wanted it to feel a little different. And I felt like some of the dialogue weighed down the scene. So I kind of had to restructure and reorient things. And in that, we lost some of that stuff. But let's see. I want to hear what they say. Yeah, this line, people like him don't know what they want. There was kind of more of a build up to that, or in the script. And what we kind of get at is the people like him is more specific than how it's kind of played out here. And here it's a bit more ambiguous. You're kind of like, oh, that's an odd thing to say. But in the script, it's oh, Robert's really racist kind of way. That's kind of a bit more how at least I intended it to kind of come across. Again, and everyone's going to read these differently. The way you look at this movie can kind of change based on your background or just how you're interpreting character interactions. I think I leave a lot open. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. I think that's kind of up for anyone else but me to decide, but that's just how it is. But this was directly inspired by Lord of the Rings here, this drinking. It kind of reminds me of when Frodo and Sam are climbing up Mount Doom and they, running out of water there. And Frodo, I think, or was it Sam? One of them drinks the water and like spills it everywhere and it's all over their mouth. And I wanted to recreate that moment. So there it was in our movie. Jordan and I ate so much oatmeal during this production. And it was just, I didn't even heat it up when we made it. I just was like cold water, poured it into the bowl, mixed it up, threw it on the table, and we went like, because again, we move pretty fast when we're on set. We're trying to make our time as economical as possible. I mean, obviously when it's just the two of us, we know how fast we can kind of move through scenes. Jordan and I have been working together for a long time. We have a shorthand and a way we talk to each other that we understand and we know what we want. I can tell him, oh, we're going for an over-the-shoulder shot, and then we want an hombre's hero shot and all that. And we're referencing usually older films of ours to each other, and we get that. So when we're together, we work pretty fast. But also we're trying to work fast in a different way when we have actors on set. We don't want to waste their time because all of our actors are working with us for free. So we want to make sure that we're giving them, we're working fast so that they're not, sitting around waiting forever to do things. Yeah. And here we kind of, more of the tensions between these two characters are coming out, I guess.
What did you two talk about without me?
Doesn't matter. I trust him. You should too. Yeah, I had a lot of fun when writing this, like kind of mirroring and pitting these characters against each other, kind of how James and Peter, who are like their family, they grew up together, biological or not, their family, but they're being almost pitted against each other by these two opposing forces of evil, which is Mary, who is like this supernatural force of evil, and then Robert, who is this materialistic force of evil, who kind of plays himself under the guise of being a holy man. And Robert's character, actually, I played back and forth. Early on, I wasn't sure if he was going to be a preacher or a like banker, or like someone like collecting on loans, kind of like this ruthless tax collector almost. But then I kind of made him both, where he is a preacher, but he's got these kind of like very, very intense like monetary focuses. This shot killed me to put in black and white because it is so beautiful out. Like the sky was this great purple and orange and pink, and it was just like, it was a sunset that any cinematographer would kill to have on the day of shooting. And I put it in black and white. It was so rough.
Can save the farm, but he doesn't even try.
Oh, and what's interesting, this was the first movie where we had 2 on-set wireless lav mics. And, oh man, I guess I can get into the big old thing with that. I didn't know enough about how to lav up an actor, and I totally messed up a majority of these scenes. So I mic'd them where they had the little foam protector on the mic. I taped it onto them with that. And I found out that when you do that, it rubs up against the clothes and makes a scratching noise a bunch, which makes sense when you think about it. But I didn't think about that at the time. And so whenever actors were moving, it would crinkle and rustle and be really, really, really loud. And I didn't really notice until a majority of this movie was shot. And that was a big thing where I thought I was gonna have to ADR this whole movie, which at the time there were some ideas around the audio of this movie. So at the time I was like, yeah, okay, I can ADR this thing. But Jordan, again, having to had ADR both our movie October and Video Carnage, he really was like, don't do it. Like, it's so much work. And I agree with him. It would have been way too much work. But there was also an earlier version of this movie where I wanted to make it so that the actors were like subtitled. Like, we never heard their voices, but we always heard the world around them. And it was gonna be kind of like this experimental audio kind of film in a weird way.
Aren't you gonna use it?
And lean into like the silent film era a little bit more. But again, I'm glad this movie came out the way it did. And I actually ended up having to clean up a lot of the audio, but I just made it sound older and made the movie look a little older. And that kind of all came together to make the movie work for me. Again, I was really scared of this movie for a long time because I was afraid of how it was going to turn out. But it came together really good. We kept it simple. Our costumes were very simple. These are just shirts that we picked up at Goodwill, threw on some baggier, old-looking pants. I was really stickler on like material. Yeah, and it worked out good. I don't know, I'm still surprised by it. Watching it now, it's still kind of like, oh yeah, we somehow pulled this movie off. I don't know how. The lenses I shot this movie on are all vintage photography lenses, 2 of which I'd had for a little bit. I got in like 2020 with a camera body from this old place it's called Scrap. If you've ever been to Portland, they have just scrap materials. It's really neat if you're an artist, because the people will like get rid of their half-used tubes of like really nice oil paints or whatever. So you can buy them for like really cheap. But they had a camera body there when I went to pick up props for another project Jordan and I had been working on at the time. And I found this camera for like $6 with 2 lenses. So I was like, I'll buy it. But the lenses were pretty bad, but I held on to them. And in black and white, they look a lot better than in color. Because in color, they have a lot of chromatic aberration stuff, which is like that pink and purple haloing around stuff when you open up the iris really wide. But this looks a little bit, but they look really good here. And then I got a really long like telephoto lens I found at Goodwill for like $25. That was the same kind of mount as those other lenses. And so I picked it up just kind of to see if it was any good, and it was. I actually really love it. I still use it a bunch. It's heavy, super heavy, but it's a nice lens. So I'd say about 25% of the movie was shot on that lens, and then we had a wide fixed 28 millimeter lens. That was probably the worst of all of them. And then a like 35 to 75 millimeter zoom lens. And the majority of the movie was shot on that, just because it was the most kind of like, again, it could zoom, so it felt like it had the most versatility. I'd have to switch lenses a whole bunch. So I'd say the majority of the shots were on that. And now the green shows up in the film, which was funny enough, when you first see the green, I put it in so that Jordan could kind of tell what was going on when I was showing early edits. I was like, yeah, there's a plant. I want to show that when the plant's growing. I'll just make it green and leave everything else black and white, just so we can kind of tell, and maybe we can reshoot and insert. But it ended up being like a part of the movie. It was never written that we'd actually see color. That was never one of my original ideas. That just kind of came out of the edit. And so, yeah, it just kind of was a very organic thing. Yeah, going back to the costumes though, I tried to make sure that all the pants didn't fit well. So like on my character, they're too short and they have too big of a waist, and all the clothes are baggy. Because I wanted us to kind of look like we'd lost weight. I wanted us to look skinny, but also at the same time, like these clothes were clothes we'd had for several years. So like I probably got these as like a teenager when I was a little shorter, and then I've had them ever since. And like my shoes that I wear in this movie, the first pair are way too small for me. Like I had to wear like really small shoes. It was kind of hard to find shoes that fit the style I was looking for. I was using a lot of photos of like Depression era photography to try and kind of influence the looks and the feel of the clothes that we were going for. And it wasn't easy to find shoes that matched. And again, we're trying to work off the cheapest budget possible. So Goodwill is where we're sourcing a lot of our clothes. But it took me several weeks of going to different Goodwills and finding the right shoes. But yeah, I ended up finding a pair that was like a full size too small, and I was like, well, these look good.
I'll make him promise not to
So
tell
yeah,
anyone.
bought those, and it was brutal. It was not comfy to wear them.
Don't you think he'll tell his best
Don't
friend
miss them.
Robert about
Don't miss it at all. Shoes, nothing will make your acting not as hard like wearing shoes that don't fit right.
It's risky to me.
So there's an acting tip for you.
Maybe you're right.
You know, I think we should keep this a secret between the both of us for a while. I won't tell anyone. Cross my heart. Here.
This is a good time to talk about Bellamy and how great of an actress she is. She was someone who we met through like a mutual friend of ours, and she reached out to us and was like, hey, I want to act in your movies. And so we met her when we were shooting Video Carnage, and we were like, hey, we have a quick little one scene that we need an actress for, so if you want to be in that and then just come meet up with us, you like come do that. So we shot a scene, we kind of met, we talked for like an hour or so, and just kind of got to know her, and she got to know us, and we decided, you know, we were like, hey, yeah, like we'll keep you posted on our next projects as those come. And as we got closer to shooting The Bell Rings, as I was kind of in the early writing stages, I had meetings regularly with all our main cast. So all four of us, we'd go out, we'd get coffee, and I would kind of share with them where I was at in the writing process and what I was thinking. But then I would deliberately be like, hey, what are your guys' like input on this? What are your thoughts? And also ask them really early on what kind of characters they want to play and how involved they want to be. Because obviously we want people involved in our movies, but if you can only commit to 2 days of shooting, then I'll write you a character that only takes 2 days to be shot. And so in the earlier versions of the script, there was no Mary character. There was no witch. It was just these two brothers both getting kind of manipulated by the preacher. this shot is a reference to my movie House. Just gonna let that. But anyways, yeah. So I asked Bellamy how involved she wanted to be in our next thing, like what her availability was. And fortunately, she said she was really available and really wanted to be as much a part of it as possible. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna write a character for this. And so then it kind of became a question of how did I want to incorporate her? And we landed on adding this witch character who was kind of the personification of the bell that only James can see. And we went from there. And that was a lot of fun to write that character and to bring that in. I think it's cool to get to see or get to have actors kind of take equal share in a movie. Because a lot of the times, like the director, is the writer, is the editor, is the cinematographer, is doing all of it. But for for the actors, it's kind of like they're just people to play the characters and make the movie happen. But I'm not saying every project's like that, but it can happen. I've heard some horror stories of directors who are like that, or the actors are just the ends to a means, or the means to an end. But in this case, it was really fun to get to have actors take ownership and build the story alongside. I really valued that experience in getting to do that, and I hope to do that again with my next feature, because again, it was just such a great time. We had a lot of fun. We met up, I think, probably at least 2 or 3 times over the course of the writing process, and I was giving them regular script updates and letting them see, and even up to shooting. And during shooting, I gave everyone permission. I was like, you guys know your characters. You guys are the protectors of these characters. So if we roll up on set and something's not sitting right, like, let's experiment and try new things. So there'd be days where any one of the actors would have new lines they wanted to try. Again, like I gave Richard full reign to write his sermon because I knew he could do that. I knew that was something he would have a good time with, and we talked about it. So. And it would have been his is far better than anything I could have written, that's for sure. And I love that got to be in the movie. And again, Jordan had shown up on set several times with, he would rewrite his lines. You can actually see in our Patreon here, if you scroll down, there's a actor's script, and it's Jordan's, and he has his notes there, and he has it, he would write down his lines on a piece of paper to memorize them, but then he would start rewriting them in the way he thinks James would say them. And then if a scene felt weird, he would actually rewrite the scene. So there are a couple scenes in this movie that aren't how they are in the director's script, because we shot them the way Jordan had written it. And we'd shoot them sometimes both ways, and I would see what played better in the edit. But I'm all about the collaboration of a movie and that process. The ownership as a director, I'm not as interested in as seeing actors get to portray characters in their way and how they want to and how they see them. I think that stuff is more interesting. I don't think I'm the best storyteller either, so I'm kind of happy to sometimes give up the reins to other actors. Like I'll drive the ship when I need to, but we're all kind of here to play and enjoy the process of making a movie. And so to let actors do that and let crew members do that is a lot of fun.
He doesn't believe that the farm's
What I think is interesting, actually, in an earlier version, since Jordan and Bellamy are talking here about me not thinking the farm is worth saving, in an earlier version, before the witch was there, I think both brothers knew about the bell and about its wish granting, and they were trying to keep it like a secret from Robert. But one brother wanted to use it to save the farm and keep it selfish, and the other wanted to kind of help other people in the town, and he was like sneaking food off to people. But I think it was originally that like my character wanted to stay and Jordan wanted to leave. But then when Jordan found the bell, he decided he wanted to stay, and my character and him like switched places. So it's kind of like it was like this circular kind of movement where they kind of traded, and one wants to stay while the other wants to leave, and then it reverses. But yeah, again, like once the witch character came in, making Jordan's character a bit more like submissive and having this character that's kind of trying to bolster him up and make him take what he wants, what he deserves. It became a bit more natural for him to kind of always want to stay.
I'm gonna be worrying about it if I'm walking around in a stolen shoe.
And so this is, I like his kind of sneaky way of making Peter want to stay is by giving him stuff. He's like bribing him, but like around in a very roundabout way.
Just tell me where you got them and I'll feel better.
I didn't steal them.
Where did you get them?
In town.
From who?
The Lancers.
Lancers moved last month.
I think this is another scene that was
Saving them
kind of
for
rewritten
something special.
day of, just slightly. Like the scene always kind of kept its same integrity and always usually ended in the same spot. But
Really nice.
what was hard was having to always remember kind of, because we don't shoot chronologically in terms of like day one, we're shooting scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4, scene 5, and next, and so on. We kind of lump these by like location and by available actors. So like on the days that like Jordan, me, and Richard are all available, we'd like start at like the shack and we'd film everything at the shack, and then we'd move on to filming at wherever. And then the same with Bellamy. And then we had like big days where all of us, I think there was only 1 or 2 days where all 4 of us were on set together. I'm trying to think, it might have just been one day, and I don't even know quite what, oh yeah, it would have been the church stuff. I think it was towards the very, very end of production. Yeah, so trying to schedule all this, it was a lot of moving pieces. So trying to remember, like, okay, in the next scene, Jordan should feel sad because he feels sad now, or how was I feeling in the last scene and how is that impacting me now? Like that was a lot of stuff we had to kind of remember, and it was a lot of work. I love this dream sequence was my favorite to edit because of this shot that's coming up here. Yeah. In the script, I think I had it written where it said like the sky watches James as he sees like Robert in the distance. And I was like, well, what does that mean? Because sometimes I'd just start writing stuff and I was like, yeah, this feels right. But I love getting to play with the editing and the opacities. And I think I used different little, like I offset the footage. And then I think I had a blending mode. I don't know if it was like multiply or what. I don't remember which. I just kind of would go down until I got the effect I wanted. But yeah, and then I kind of overlaid to get these like multiple eyes. It would like get rid of anything getting like the higher, like the brighter values, and just keep the darks. But then yeah, I would just fade it all in and out. And I love this little detail. The tree over James's shoulder here looks like Robert.
Have you had
And I love it so much. It's like, I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if I saw that when I was shooting. I don't think I did.
Are you still
But it's one of my
worried about the
favorite
farm?
little
I thought
details.
things were going all right.
Totally unintentional, but oh, it's like, it's perfect. It's one of those things, it's like you couldn't have planned. It just is
What
right.
if you made a wish?
And those kind of things like excite me so much about movies, is when things just come
Not to
across,
give us
come together the right way.
Make it stop
It's so
coming
good.
around.
I think this is a scene, I didn't get to storyboard as much as I wanted on this production. I really wanted to storyboard the whole movie and have it all good. But it takes a lot of time to storyboard, and I think I had to just give my time elsewhere to make this movie happen, and storyboarding wasn't as important. But I think this is one of the scenes that I did storyboard. I think a lot of the scenes that had Bellamy in it, I storyboarded.
Robert's gonna walk all over you if you don't do something.
This was a scene also that got kind of changed around a bit. I think there's some dialogue that was cut. And I don't know if the scene comes across as weird or oddly paced. That was always kind of something I was battling when editing, because some of these scenes, again, like I really did cut up and change the movie. Like this doesn't play out this quite the same way as it does in the script. But again, it kind of just became a need of like, this is how it had to go. I remember watching this with Nathan and Caleb, and they totally thought Robert died right here. They were like, "Oh my gosh, he's dead already? What?" No, he didn't die. Not yet. Spoiler, I guess. People have to die in this movie.
James.
Yeah, and there was a scene here in between the shot where I'm sitting at the church and this, there was a whole scene where I talked to Robert that was cut out because we wanted to kind of keep that ambiguity of what happened and how serious it was. Robert had a lot more scenes in the script where he was around. There's a scene earlier where James and Mary are walking and talking, and James says that Robert keeps coming around with his fancy words and contracts. And the reason he says that is because there were scenes that were cut where Robert kept coming back to be like, "Hey guys, you changed your mind yet? Like, clock's ticking." And we decided that making Robert kind of a bit more like this character who's kind of looming in the background, he's more of a presence that's kind of driving these brothers apart, rather than being like physically there all the time. We felt like that made his scenes more impactful when he was there by having less of him. And that's that, if you have 3 great scenes, they're not gonna feel as great. But if you take away 2 of them and have 1 great scene, it's gonna be more impactful. And so that's kind of how we approached Robert, was having a little bit less of him, and letting the scenes where he is there, like, really chew the scenery and make him this big character. Every time he shows up, it's a kind of like a mic drop moment for the movie. And they're kind of always just kind of stuck wondering what's going to happen next. Kind of makes our characters kind of, I don't know,
Try to have everything I
lost and tossed around by the sea of uncertainty. I don't know.
I'm completely content.
Sorry if you're gonna be drinking. I've got my hot chocolate that I'm drinking right now. I think this was another scene where I was really
I have a home.
kind of wasn't sure how I was gonna shoot it. I wanted it to be like in the woods originally, and it was just kind of, I think it was a scene that I almost cut.
I want you to have it. You should use the.
But I kept it in. The reason I kept it in was because I really liked, again, getting to see Mary's manipulation of Peter, where
I can't find it.
she cares about him. Like, she obviously cares, but at the same time, she's deliberately doing things to make him
Here it is.
bend to her will,
You must have set it down without noticing.
and letting that kind of play out where it's in plain view of the audience. Like, we can, if you know it's happening, you can see her take the bell and pick it up and walk off with it. But if you don't notice it, it kind of can sneak past you. Shooting this moon stuff was really fun. Yeah, and I loved this. I think was one of the last scenes that I edited. Was this nightmare, and it in editing it kind of came together like a last little piece of James's puzzle, where the city is like an anxiety thing for him. It's like he has like anxiety, like he has like anxiety issues around moving and leaving a familiar place, and so that realizing that made it a whole lot like clearer about what James wanted, and like his fears around leaving. And so I was still kind of learning about these characters even as editing them. And again, it's like you can kind of write a movie and a character in a specific way, but I kind of found out in this movie that you can have your beliefs about a character as you're shooting them, but when you're actually like editing the movie and it's coming together, those like beliefs can kind of change. You don't, and you shouldn't get caught up in, I mean, oh, that was a bad shovel throw there. But you shouldn't get caught up in the, like, needing your character to be read a certain way. I think I was really caught up in how does James come across? How does Peter come across? Are they coming across the ways that I intended for them to? And in some ways that's important, but I think also your audience is just gonna read them how they are, and that's okay. And letting ambiguity be there is all right. Because like I said, I just wasn't sure how James was gonna come across. I didn't want him to come across as like a villain. I don't know. But in the end, like letting the fact that just these characters all make bad decisions
It's only one.
be part of it, and let that be, again, like an okay thing. Everyone is kind of morally gray in this. Even the forces of evil, in a way, are kind of gray. It's just a movie where people just make decisions. It's just like the real world. Yeah. So I'm always curious kind of people's interpretations of these characters, only because I went into it with such strong feelings about how these characters were supposed to be kind of interpreted. But then by the end, it was,
How do you feel?
you know,
this week?
I had to let go of those preconceived ideas about each one of them and let the movie just kind of be how it is.
Is there anything else I can do for you?
Well, there is one thing. Is there any possibility you'd reconsider selling me that home?
See, this kind of was like the third or fourth time in the script that Robert comes by and talks to me about this. But it's just in the final movie, it's the second time we talk about it, or I guess third, because of the
Wilting.
dinner. But yeah, there's a lot more in the script again if you read it.
It's not looking good.
I have an idea. I will drop by tomorrow. There's something I'd like to show you. I think it might help you make up your mind.
Yeah, this next scene here I really enjoyed. It was one of the things that I showed people kind of quickly, or like once I had it on the timeline, I was like sending screenshots to people. And I remember I was having a Zoom call with some friends, and I showed them this shot of the car. And I was like, yeah, this is just something I just finished editing for The Bell Rings. And they were like, oh my gosh, how much did it cost to rent the car? And when they said that, Jordan and I, we looked at each other and we were like, yeah, it was cheaper than you thought, because that's not real. It's just a JPEG that I found of an old Model T from like historical photo website. And I cut out all the windows and everything, and I just threw it into the scene, and it looks great. It's just a flat image. I don't know how to 3D model. I wasn't about to overcomplicate this any more than it already was. So yeah, just threw in that. And again, it turned out really good. I love compositing 2D stuff into 3D spaces. I think it's always so satisfying when you pull it off. It can sometimes look janky, but I think it looks nice. And this, yeah, kind of hodgepodging together like these montages was a lot of fun, because I had tons of footage of farm stuff, but it was like kind of finding these in-between moments like this stuff. That was a lot of fun, like Jordan sitting and just kind of picking little moments and seeing how they read together, and the puzzle of that. It can kind of be a pain because it's like, oh my gosh, like there's no right or wrong answer. It's just sitting with it and finding it until it feels right. Yeah, it was hard. This is another beautiful sunset. So editing all this stuff together, I think took quite a bit of time, because again, you're just wanting it to be the right combination of footage and read well. This scene here was shot in like one of the last days of filming. We were kind of like rushing around to get everything.
Started looking yesterday. I don't know why.
Is Peter gonna help?
He left.
I think this is one of the few big continuity errors where Bellamy has a necklace on. You know, we just missed it.
You need to.
Luckily, it's not too bad. Worse things have happened.
You see it? Right there. A transcontinental railway being built right through the town.
I just want to say Bellamy did a great job with that line. Saying transcontinental railway being built right through town is not an easy line. Much easier to write as a screenwriter than to say as an actor. I feel bad. But she nailed it.
I should tell Peter.
Peter's too
and making all these signs was a lot of fun. I had to research like documents and stuff, trying to find stuff that looked relatively similar to what the Arrow would have for like graphics and stuff, and how they'd like lay out all their stuff. It's not perfect. It's far from perfect, but I tried to actually copy the verbiage from like signs that were similar to this, or
I should tell Peter.
like for the deed where the sale of the land happened, like trying to look at pictures of documents that were for the sale of property, and
I have to at least try.
yeah, there's a lot of it. It's just that I'm probably guilty of way too much of this in this movie, but like my research was like just approximate enough to give off the feel of like the era that I'm doing. I didn't do extremely intense research to make this movie. I mean, obviously, if you're trying to recount like dates of things that literally happened, it's really important to do that. But at the same time, for a movie like this, where it's like this very isolated thing, I didn't worry too much about the specifics of the actual like Great Depression and the Dust Bowl and those things. I just drew inspiration from them without, again, like having to worry about, oh my gosh, but what about the dates of when this thing happened and how much land did it go for? I tried to find approximates that were close. Like when Robert offers them $200 for the land, I was trying to look up prices of how much it costs to buy and sell land, and in that time period, and I couldn't ever land on a number that was perfect, but I got a number that was, ballpark-ish. So again, I just didn't get caught up in the details. For some movies, it's probably more important than others, and this one I felt like we could get away with it. I think we did. Yeah, so now my characters got back from going downtown. We would have gone to, there's this area called the Pittock Mansion in Portland, which is this old mansion that overlooks the city. And I wanted to shoot a scene there. And at first what I almost wanted to do was shoot on a green screen for us, like overlooking the city, sitting on a bench, and get like an old photo of like Portland or some city and have it like in front of us. But we ended up not shooting it, and it became kind of more of a time thing, and also like a need of seeing what happens, as cool as it would be, and it would add to the runtime, and it'd add some interesting interactions. Removing it kind of was awesome because we don't know where Peter's at. We don't know if he did it. We don't know how he's feeling, and it's kind of unraveling for the audience and for James at the same time. And so we don't know, because if I had kept the scene in, we would know that Peter already sold the farm, because it ends with him and Robert shaking hands and like being like, "If I sold it," but here it unfolds for us a lot cleaner, and the audience is getting the information along with James. We can sympathize with him a lot more because it comes out of left field for him and for us. And so we didn't shoot it, and we would have also had to shoot it after coming back from Chicago. So because all this we were trying to shoot before filming in Chicago, or before we went on a trip to Chicago, we were trying to finish filming all this stuff, and so getting all that done in time, it would have been too much, and then we didn't want to like jumpstart a whole bunch of more filming days after coming back. So I ultimately decided that we just weren't going to even try shooting those scenes, and we were just going to cut them from the movie. And I think that was the right decision.
It's my farm, and it's my decision.
Yeah, and I tried to have moments here. So when Peter just said, "It's my farm, it's my decision," I want there to be a lot of moments where he repeats lines that Robert says. So there's things he'll say like, "People like you don't know what you want." He'll say that towards the end. "It's your farm, it's your decision," something Robert said, and my character repeats that. I want him to kind of be becoming Robert, to kind of show the further divide between the brothers. Here, kind of having Mary present in the scene physically, we wanted to kind of keep that ambiguity of, is she real, isn't she real? I like this scene. Originally, it was going to be a bit more VFX heavy because I wanted there to be a bit. There's this great scene in Legion, the Fox TV show, where one of the characters is in like an insane asylum and they're like dreaming, and they like lift up from their bed and like hover around. So it's like the camera like tracks with them and it's like locked onto their head. So the background is like floating away from them and all that. So I wanted to try and do that here. So when James flips onto his back, and we go to a close-up, I wanted so badly for him to float off of the ground and levitate over to a grassy field, land, and then we'd go into the next scene. But in the end, I just could not get it to look right. No matter how hard I tried, it was too much. So we ended up cutting that. And then it just cuts to the next scene, which is totally effective. Gets across what I'm trying to do. I do love the grass and the straw kind of on the ground around him. I think it's really, really nice. And the lighting was phenomenal. Like all these nights that we were shooting out in the field, like at dusk, like could not be beat. The lighting was so good. It was a lot of fun. This movie, I knew that there would be a lot of pauses, and I knew that the atmosphere of the movie was really important. So it was really fun to let scenes breathe like that, where you didn't have to worry about get to the next thing every scene. It wasn't a fast-paced movie. I knew I could let things kind of play out.
You need to get rid of him. Why not? He's taken everything from you. He's taken your farm.
Yeah, this is probably one of my favorite
dignity.
parts of the movie is this.
What else
The
is left
score,
to take?
I haven't even talked about the score yet. Jordan did a great job scoring this movie. I gave him kind of like a rough ideas, and he would kind of send me some demos, and I edited the movie to demo tracks that he had put together. And then when the movie was all done, we were gonna talk about, I would send it off to him, Jordan would finish the final soundtrack, and then I'd lay that in. But Jordan lost all of the files of his demos. And so he had to do it all from scratch. I think this song though didn't change. I think we kept it the same. I don't remember. Because we had the demo like MP3s. We didn't have like the files, like the GarageBand files that Jordan was editing through to change them or make any adjustments. So some of these songs are totally different than what I originally was editing to. But this one I think stays mostly the same. But yeah, this sequence was so like, when it came together, I was like going nuts. It was like, oh my gosh, if nothing else, like if the rest of the movie's terrible, this scene here from dinner where Peter is like, we're leaving, and James storms off, through to intermission, like I was like, man, I was so excited. It was like, this is the movie I was trying to make. Yeah, filming Robert's death was a lot of fun. And just gave him all the food he wanted. And it was just like, this is my like Denethor eating, again in Lord of the Rings, in Return of the King, when he's eating all the tomatoes and it's all gross. I kind of wanted that same feeling. So if you don't like people eating food grossly, I'm sorry that this scene exists, but I really wanted to make one. A great fact about this scene too is the teeth that he throws up are my real baby teeth. That's my molar. But Richard was a trooper, and he was like, yeah, I'll do it. Chocolate syrup, good old Hershey's. We've been using it for years. This sound effect, I swear it's so similar to the one they use in Stranger Things season 4, but I'll have you know, I put it on my timeline before that season was out, so. Yeah, having this like very kinetic, like dance, like where Richard's like throwing his body around, and it was really fun to kind of edit this all together. And this last shot here where Robert falls is like one of my favorites. Yeah, we just had him fall backwards onto the table. I think he was kind of like sitting on the edge of it. And so we had him go back, and I kind of distract with him as best I could. I just was like trying to keep the same distance because it was, again, these are manual lenses, so the focus I had to try and keep good. And so I just stuck with him, and he's cleared a spot, and he just fell backwards. Worked out good. And then here we are at intermission. I'll let it play out, and then we'll kind of kick back in with the rest of the commentary. Yeah. Well, I guess I'll just say that the intermission was always part of the script. So this was always planned. It was a lot of fun. I think one of the most satisfying moments ever was like the dead silence after that when we did a live screening for the movie in Yakima, Washington. It was very cool. Yeah, I enjoyed, up to this point, I was like, man, maybe the movie should have just ended right there. But it keeps going, which is pretty cool. All right, I'm gonna let the music keep playing, and then we'll continue. The funeral of Robert. Peter is not having a good time. Funny enough, this tombstone that we're standing at did have the name Robert on it. I didn't have to add that in when it cuts around. Yeah, it actually said Robert on it. I grew out my hair for this role, my facial hair. Glad I did it. It looks good, but oh boy. You can tell it's towards the end of shooting because it's getting real long, that those sideburns are. But yeah, I did alter the dates, but the name, it just said Robert. That was just there. This scene was, according to Jordan, his favorite to shoot as James, and he, this scene isn't in the script. There's a different scene instead that we shot where James is sitting by himself and Bellamy comes up and surprises him like she did in the first scene of the movie, where she and James are hanging out. And she like goes, boo, and it's like, we should be celebrating. And then they drink. But instead, we shot that, but we also shot this, which Jordan was like, I want to try this out. And so we just let the camera roll, and we did it a few times, and it's just Bellamy and Jordan making fun of Robert. And I really like it. And it's like the only time James is happy in this movie. And he's so, yeah, it's like kind of heartbreaking, but that's what makes him happy. Like, this is what it took to get him to that point, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, I always feel really bad for James's character. Yeah, and again, these are scenes that, like, I think you could argue two ways. You could argue they need to be shorter, because I really let this scene play out, but I think letting James have this moment of joy and kind of seeing like these very candid moments between characters, I think is really, really important for this movie. Obviously, it doesn't make sense for everything. If they did this in the middle of, I don't know, Spider-Man, it might be a little funky, but yeah, just letting, I think it was fun for the actors. It was fun for me, and this is another one of my favorite shots in the movie. Is these slow-mo parts of Jordan walking. They just look so nice. 60 frames a second goes a long ways. So yeah, this is the stuff that would have, where the first scene where they meet, where she surprises him, that's where it would take place, is by the river. But I really like this sequence of her making them drinking, so I kept that. I just didn't show any of their interaction of first finding each other after Robert's death. Although you can assume they've talked since, but in that, James was a lot more kind of on the fence about if what he did was good or bad. He seemed a bit more down. But in this, we just go straight to him being really happy. There's no kind of like warm up to him becoming happy, where Mary gets him drunk and then they celebrate. So we go right into celebration, and he's just happy, which definitely changes the read of the scene and where James is at and how he feels about Robert's death. But I think it's a lot cleaner, and it kind of brings us right into this scene where James kind of shares his true feelings about how much he doesn't like Robert with Peter. And obviously Peter's not happy about it, because Robert was kind of the mentor figure to him, the father figure, who kind of has replaced their parents since they died. And now they're stuck again. Now they're back at square one. They have nothing, and they almost got out. So Peter ain't happy. I think we filmed this scene quite a few times to try and get it right. So I think this is an important scene. And now kind of the things are really ramping up between these brothers. Neither one wants to back down, but James is kind of, this is the first time we're really seeing him getting loud, and then things start to shatter. It's kind of like the boots come down. The happiness of what the wishes could bring is kind of on the decline. The curse is setting in. I think it's one of the few camera movements we have in the movie there, actually. Definitely one of the only fast camera movements where it like whips around. I love the aspect ratio of this movie. I always knew it was going to be 4:3. It was shot with that in mind, and it looks great.
Why don't wishes last?
I think I really love this scene and
The plates, the fields,
kind of where James is at.
they're all
That question of why don't wishes last?
Well, you can always wish for more things. I don't think it's anything for you to worry about.
yeah.
Are you okay? You seem sad.
It's nothing.
You can talk to me.
I think some of these scenes we really had to reorder and restructure in editing. Like they moved around again from how the script had them written. And I think you'll see that more and more towards the end of this movie. The first half of the movie up to intermission, I think there's only a couple of scenes that get cut and one scene that gets moved to a different place. But it stays pretty true to how the script is. But the second half of this movie, in the edit, things really had to move around. And that, again, came down to pacing. It came down to kind of emotionally, we had to kind of alter where characters were at different parts. And we kind of had to build it up a little differently. And also, because there's a pivotal scene coming up where Mary is going to tell James about the bell's origin. And originally that happened in the first half of the movie, but we felt like it spelled out what was going on way too soon. And it was it was the last scene I'd written in the movie. And when I was writing the script, and I put it at a point, but I thought that possibly it would move regardless. So I wasn't surprised when we moved it, but yeah, we really rebuilt the second act of this movie, or the second half of this movie, kind of, again, just to make things kind of flow better, because certain character stuff wasn't lining up. Again, it's kind of how it's written in the script versus how it comes across in the like in the editing. Sometimes you really need to make big changes to make things work. And it's not a bad thing to kind of rip things apart and really change them. I think it's, as a director and as an editor, it's really, really fun to kind of make your movie and build your movie out of these pieces that you've shot. So, yeah. But it took a lot of trial and error and a lot of different edits. I have several different exports of this movie where it looks very different, especially in this second half. The first half didn't change nearly as much as the second. Couldn't even tell you all of it. It's been so long. But yeah, it was a lot. Drunk James is one of my favorites. I always laugh, especially this bit. I had to rip up so many pairs of shoes to make this work. I had to do them like day of too. Oh, it was brutal. I did not have a good time with shoes in this movie.
What is this?
Yeah, this is another scene where you'll see that this is kind of a funky angle because you don't see me talking, and it kind of comes down to, again, like all the cutting was distracting and it didn't quite work, and the angle I had for my character was kind of odd, so we decided to keep it all at this one angle.
Since when do you care about the farm?
I care.
But I think it works really well. I like kind of having the bottle over James's face, and we're kind of seeing his distress.
Give me the bottle.
We're kind of, yeah, it's like we're confronting him too.
You shouldn't be
I don't know, like we, the audience.
Do it yourself then.
There's some healthy family dynamics here going on. Yeah, the bell kind of takes on like a personality of like the One Ring. Again, there was a lot of Lord of the Rings stuff that I kind of was borrowing for this. I wanted Peter and James's relationship, like a really slow version of when Smeagol and is it Deagle? I don't remember their names, or the cousin's name from Lord of the Rings, but when he kills his cousin over the ring, when they find it when they're out fishing, that's kind of what I was going for. I wanted to be a really slow version of that, where once they find the bell, there's this competing energy for it. And while that was an earlier version, again, that was the pre-Mary character version of this story. Having just the presence of the bell, like it's just kind of following James. It just pops up. It doesn't go away. It's ever present, and it's ever kind of like influencing his thoughts and how he is. Really wanted to kind of bring that in. Each of these dream sequences, I really wanted each one to feel different. which was kind of hard to do. And again, it was a lot of trial and error and kind of just throwing things at the wall. Like, I think the way that I kind of go into this dream sequence here was kind of a, like almost a last ditch effort to make it work. Because how I thought I was gonna do it, it just wasn't coming together right. It felt weird, it felt really clunky. So my last ditch here is when he touches the bell, there's this really rapid cutting of like all these shots, and I wanted them to kind of be like the horrible things we've seen up to this point, or you know, the ghosts or the thoughts that haunt James. And again, we get that tree imagery, which I haven't really covered too much yet, but we kind of get to it as Mary talks about the bell and its origin. But I wanted tree imagery to definitely be there. That's great. One of my few continuity errors again is you can totally see the Hershey's chocolate sauce bottle right there. Looks like a jug that they drink from. Hershey's existed back then, I think. I think it's okay. They might not have had chocolate syrup, but I've forgiven myself for that error. It's not a movie without it. Happens to Disney. Yeah, now we kind of get into this, the more of the tree stuff, where we hear this cracking on his arm, and there's this mystery of what it is. And
Come see this.
originally we see it. You can kind of even see in the shot there's something there. I wanted to show that this tree bark was starting to grow, and we kind of got to that earlier again when he was coughing up the dirt. But ultimately I left it out mostly out of the fact that I'm not good at applying prosthetics. And so it didn't look the way that I wanted it to. And it came across a little cheesy. Like it just didn't quite read the way I wanted. So I left it where it was, again, like leaning into the ambiguity and the mystery of it, where we don't quite know what it is. And then we're kind of in this weird scene now where, like the vision that James saw earlier, we see that there's kind of like this slime and all the plants are dying. So there's this big question of what's happening to James and what's happening to the farm, what's happening to all the wishes, why aren't they lasting? And kind of letting that mystery kind of play out a little bit longer. But I felt like these tree vines, where this ivy is growing up the trees, that felt like a, I don't know, like a visual analogy. But yeah, originally this scene, again, like I was saying, this was in Act 1. I think it was like scene 38 or something like that. I think it was early.
I grew up being told stories about it.
What stories?
I'm not sure I remember.
Yeah, I wanted this movie to feel like a folklore,
There was a town.
like Grimm's fairy tales almost, where this is the story of the bell,
And one day they discovered
and we hear about these characters who found it. So I wanted this to feel like Grimm's fairy tales in the Americas.
candy and toys.
But this part here is like an actual Grimm's fairy tale.
But the parents of
Like
the
I said, it was
child
one of the
never
last things I wrote.
to visit her. They thought that she wanted to hurt the children. So one night they went into the woods with torches to find her and kill her. But the children, they got to her first, and they warned her about the mob. So she used her magic to turn herself into an immortal tree that could never be burned.
And I wanted there to be kind of the sounds in the background and stuff. They're a little quiet, but I kind of toned it back because I felt it was a little distracting, but I wanted it still there. There's an album or a series of albums that I really like by a band called the Deer Hunter. Deer spelled D-E-A-R, not D-E-E-R, that's a different band. But they have these albums called The Acts. And in Act 5, the last like 3 or 4 songs, there's this like mob coming to kill one of the characters that in the songs. We can hear like the torches and the riots coming after them. And So I wanted to kind of incorporate some of that into this movie. So I put it in where we hear, again, like torches lit and mobs screaming, and we could hear the kids laughing and playing. Yeah, those shoes were like falling apart.
Are you sure you can't take the land?
And this is Zach right after we'd shot Wild Boys.
My father just gave away the rest of our land, so nobody else wanted to buy it.
He got a fresh post-filming haircut, which I was very jealous of because I couldn't get one because I had to keep my hair long for Wild Boys and then jumped right into Bell Rings. So those were shot pretty much back to back. But this field here, this is all like right out back of the church. We were kind of just like walking the perimeter of it in the graveyard, trying to find little backgrounds to film because we only had the one field. I think we were done shooting there by this point. Yeah, and this was the last thing, like one of the last things we shot was with Caleb and Nathan. We filmed these little scenes with them. I wanted them to cameo in the movie since they were there kind of near at the very beginning of the movie's creation and getting the location for the church. So, and we shot at this this railroad bridge, which is a location in an earlier 2 films that we've made, For A Few Mustaches More and Righteous Hombres, those 2 movies. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to have them there. So it was great having them. Yeah. That's when Peter's having to decide how much he's willing to lowball this farm just to get out. And Bellamy and James aren't going to be too happy about it. This was in the scene, in the script, I knew this was gonna be just like this very drawn out, quiet scene where they don't even talk to each other. Like they're just total silent treatment. I think in the original edit, I had it like twice as long. It was so long. I kind of had to trim down some of it. Yeah, the beds situation in this was kind of hard because at first I was like, oh, what am I gonna make these characters sleep on? I couldn't think of a good option. But fortunately, no beds was the best option. It's like, yeah, I'll just make their lives harder. They just sleep on the floor. And I kind of like you get this moment here where you have almost James's regret, where it's you can tell he wants his brother, like he wants his brother's affection. He wants things to kind of go back to how they were. He just wants a connection to his family. But Peter is so frustrated with the farm and so frustrated about what James wants and thinks this is James's fault that he, turns his back on him. So then, the family is ripped apart there. And the farm is sold to the railroad.
Why do you still put up with him when he treats you like you're nothing?
Again, that arm scratching there is kind of
He's my only family.
comes out of that
You have the
bark, the tree branch that's growing in out of James that we kind of heard earlier. Again, in the script, it played a much larger role up to this point. It's almost like he's hiding it.
When we were kids,
The curse.
we would play all
And
the
this
time.
monologue here from Jordan, he put together. He changed from what I originally had written.
Before
How
us.
could he? Now, like I said, it was a lot of fun. I loved the collaboration, and I loved actors bringing their interpretations of scenes. Obviously, if it doesn't fit with what I'm going to do or what I'm looking for, that's a bigger discussion that we can do. But all the actors, we were very much on the same page for this production. So there was no questions or wonderings about what this movie was going to be. Like we knew what we were making. So
And when you bring him food,
was nice. All the actors brought stuff in that fit really well whenever they had ideas for how a scene could go.
His farm?
And this scene again, I think it's better than how I had written it.
Doesn't sound like a loving brother to me. You know who that
I'm
sounds
definitely
like?
not the strongest
It sounds
screenwriter,
like
but
him. And you know what we have to do with people like him.
you don't need to be.
I can't.
You did everything you could.
Yeah, I do love this scene a lot. I love
If you want to
James's
then this is the only way.
his kind of brokenness. Jordan has a great video on our channel where he talks about kind of the acting and going into it and how he was learning how to kind of control these big emotions and how to approach these heavy scenes. And he talks about his successes and where he feels he could have improved. And I think it's great if you're into acting in any way, whether you're a confident actor who's been acting a long time or if you're new to it. It was a very, very cool thing to kind of watch and see Jordan talk about. So I definitely recommend it to anyone who wants to know more kind of about acting or approaching these bigger scenes. These clouds were added in post. These like clouds on the right side of the screen, these darker ones. It's kind of subtle here. When we cut to the wide, it's like, oh, big clouds, big storm. Yeah, you kind of have the thunder in the distance, the storm brewing. Again, I love the score of this movie. The building, like orchestral pieces, are really cool. I love, again, there's the bell kind of in the back. And I think if we cut, I think it's gonna go to these, yeah, this is stuff, these trees. These were shot in Chicago when we were driving around one night. There was this huge storm rolling in. Both nights we were there, this huge storms. So like we were worried about like tornadoes coming in or something. But yeah, I got some footage of the trees and it was like, this is perfect. I'll use these in the bell rings. So that's what those are.
Railroad's taking the farm.
Kind of build in this perfect climax. I kind of taken a book, a page out of Zack Snyder's playbook of letting the environment kind of match the emotion where the storm is coming, the emotions are at their height. These characters are totally at their farthest from each other and letting kind of the environment around them show that where there's storm coming through, it's windy, it's dark, it's night. Letting all that stuff kind of come together. Because again, movies aren't reality, so you can play that to your advantage. Let things be larger than life and let the environment again take over. I think that's kind of a fun thing that comes with filmmaking as we get to, things can be so heightened, they're beyond reality. I love playing in that space, kind of beyond what's real or realistic. Oh, I think there's another bit where I said my character copies Robert's dialogue. And we kind of get that flash there where James is remembering Robert. These little flashes, again, we're also very close, like added very close to the end, and we see Mary kind of disappear there in the, where we're kind of put together what's real to Peter versus what's real to James, and how Peter sees it. Mary's not there. And we're hearing what's in James's head, and you kind of are stuck with these questions of what was real.
She's right
Yeah.
there.
And now the kind of
I don't see anyone.
the divide just gets further now. And now it's like this crazy person, according to Peter's point of view, probably, of what the heck is James talking about? He was not expecting any of this.
Listen to yourself. You're sick. You need help.
You're not sick.
It's time to go.
He's filling your head with lies.
I'm not going.
Kill him now.
course you are. I don't get a choice anymore.
And here James finally is, and we get those kind of the what's real. This, is he becoming a tree? So the curse has reached James.
Kill him now.
Yep, that was just, I had to like fall and do like a kind of like a throw push-up. Like I threw myself into the air, and then Jordan had the tripod set up over me, and he's pulled me through. And it was very scary because it's kind of like a ledge, and
You were supposed to kill
yeah.
him.
It was one of those things where it's like I knew when I was writing Peter that I was playing Peter and that I was okay with doing this, because I wasn't gonna ask any of my actors to do this, because Jordan had to drag me on the field and on the dirt. Something that no actor wants to probably have to do unless you're, I don't know, really okay with doing super physical stuff. I didn't want to ask Jordan to have to do it. I wrote things that I knew where people would be comfortable with. And I was cool with taking this for my movie. Yeah, that's something I wish I had reshot. I wish I had gotten it like a branch that looked good in the lighting that I was shooting in. Because, yeah, I don't know if that affects cells. I think it's okay. I think there's ways we could have done it much better, but I think it was something I'd put off till the end, and so I was kind of rushed and had to kind of just make do, which is a bummer. Got the knife. What's gonna happen? Yeah, this was the last night of filming with Bellamy. This was her final scene. And I think it's one of the only nights that we went overtime. Like we were set, I think our goal was wrapped by 11. And I think we wrapped at midnight, which was, that one was on me. It was a lot we had to film, but we were kind of stuck by
What did you do to him?
the light.
His fate was sealed by your hands long ago.
Are you controlling him? Did you do this?
And again, one last scene that was not in the script,
James acted.
but was added later was this. This scene was
Why? So you can
written by
hurt all
Jordan.
over again?
He showed up on set the day of and was like, hey,
He is with you.
Killing him.
your characters need to talk,
saving him.
because we never
You
talk in the
did
script.
anything for him at all.
And so like Bellamy and I, we never had an exchange. And so this
You're
was
so
that.
sad.
Jordan wrote an exchange between the two of us. And I
Never
really,
cared.
again, it was the right call.
I loved him.
Did you?
It was kind of needed to kind of give a catharsis to the movie. Otherwise
You wanted to
the ending
trade
would have been a little weird.
for a shiny new city. Your broken shoes for
And I
a
think
modern one.
it's a good scene to have let Peter see the mistakes he made.
All you've ever wanted was a new life.
Yeah.
That's a shame then.
Because Peter sees himself as a very self-righteous character. He thinks he's making the tough decisions for the family, but he's making,
City awaits.
this lets him question finally, like, is he making the right decisions?
Help.
What's done is done. As for what you do next, I'll let you decide.
I do love the lighting of this. We just put a light through the window. I love the little dots that are hitting there.
James. Sorry. This is my fault.
This is supposed to be like this. I deserve it.
yeah, again, Jordan's acting video, I think he talks about this scene. Again, that's on YouTube, and he talks about how he approached it, and again, where he feels like he was successful versus not. I think it's a really great breakdown for actors to listen to. If you play the audio for this scene, Jordan and I are laughing our butts off. We're like joking. Jordan's like doing a Yoda impression as we're filming this. I had to kind of just guess where the middle of the frame was, and no joke, I nailed it. Like, that was perfect. Didn't have to adjust the framing at all. So proud of myself for that drop, because it was just Jordan and I out there, and we had to just like do our best to land in the right spot. And we totally got it first try. Whew. I really love how bright this movie is, because House, when I made that, it was a very dark film. And I knew that when I made this, I wanted it to feel the opposite. I wanted it to feel really bright, really open and expansive, while House was very dark and claustrophobic. I wanted them to be like obviously they're not going to be sequels, but I want them to kind of feel like siblings, where they're interconnected in some ways. There's some thematic similarities, some visual similarities, but there's also like distinct opposites to each other. They play against each other. Yeah, again, just a JPEG of a tree that I just like chopped out, threw into a scene. Looks good. I think we just had like a shovel planted in the ground that I had as like my mark. James is now a tree. Again, it's kind of like The Lighthouse, this movie too. If there's definitely parallels to that. Just wanted this movie to feel very, like a folklore outside of time. But yeah, that's The Bell Rings. There it is. It was a great project. Again, I'm just so grateful to all the people that were involved. Loved making this movie and loved every part of it. So grateful that this movie exists. Oh, that's right. There's an end credits scene. I forgot about this. This was added in also super last minute. Yeah, this was in the script, but the title would come after it. But the timing felt a little funky, so I put the title and then this, because it's kind of like not even end credits, but. Oh, she's still out there. Yeah. Again, the bell lives on. Where could it go? So yeah, again, just super grateful for this movie and all the actors and all the people's hard work that went into it. Man, it was quite a ride. But yeah, I'm just super proud of it, which I didn't think I'd be. For a long time, I was really afraid of this movie and afraid of finishing it, because I was afraid to sit back and all the hard work and be disappointed. But I'm still really happy with this movie. It's been a while. Yeah, excited to make the next thing. But yeah, thank you everyone who's part of it. Thank you everyone who's listening to this commentary. If you're listening, you're a patron and you're supporting our work, so we appreciate you. Yeah, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us, and hope you enjoyed this commentary. We'll see you over on the podcast or on the YouTube channel.